Let me ask you something. When people say the app is running on AWS, what does that actually mean? Because apps don't just exist. Something has to run the code. This is the point where many people feel AWS suddenly becomes complicated. There are service names, options, and comparisons. But once you understand the idea behind them, the names become much easier to remember. Welcome to Learn Data Easy. This is the series where we break down cloud, data, and AI concepts without jargon and without stress. I'm Charlene. I work in data and AI, and my goal here is to help you understand how cloud services actually work in a way that's clear and practical. In this episode, we're talking about compute, how AWS runs applications and code. Before we talk about any service names, here's the most important idea for the episode. So AWS gives you different ways to run code, depending on how much responsibility you want to keep for yourself. Some services give you lots of control. Some services let AWS handle almost everything. Every compute service fits somewhere on that scale. Compute simply means running code. Anytime an application loads, processes data, or responds to a request, compute is happening. Before the cloud, this meant running code on computers you owned. With AWS, it means renting computer power from AWS and using it only when you need it. The first and most traditional compute service is Amazon EC2, which stands for Elastic Compute Cloud. EC2 gives you a virtual server in the cloud. You choose its size, operating system, and configuration. You install software on it and decide how it runs. Because you control the server, you are also responsible for managing it. Things like updates, patches, and security inside the machine. A good way to remember EC2 is this. So EC2 gives you control, but also responsibility. EC2 is commonly used when you need full control over the environment. When you're moving existing applications from on-premises servers, or when you need custom configurations. For the exam, remember that EC2 is the most flexible option, but it requires the most management. On the other end of the scale is AWS Lambda. With Lambda, you don't manage servers at all. You upload your code, define when it should run, and AWS takes care of everything else. Your code runs only when it's triggered, and you pay only for the time it runs. This is why Lambda is called serverless. Not because servers don't exist, but because you never have to manage them. A good way to remember Lambda is this. You manage the code, AWS manages everything else. Lambda is used for event-driven tasks, automation, and workloads that need to scale automatically. It's very common in data processing, APIs, and backend services. For the exam, remember that Lambda is simple, scalable, and requires very little operational effort. Between EC2 and Lambda are containers. Now, containers package an application together with everything it needs to run. AWS provides managed container services like Amazon ECS and Amazon EKS. Containers give you more structure and consistency than raw servers, but still more control than serverless. For the Cloud Practitioner exam, you don't need to know container internals. Just remember that containers sit between EC2 and Lambda in terms of control and responsibility. So here's the simplest way to compare AWS compute services. Amazon EC2, most control, most responsibility. AWS Lambda, least control, least responsibility. And then you have containers like ECS and EKS. They're somewhere in between. If you remember this comparison, you'll be able to answer many compute questions correctly. If you work with data or AI, compute choices matter. Training models, running pipelines, and processing data all require compute power. AWS gives you the flexibility to choose between control and simplicity, depending on the task, without buying or managing physical hardware. Let's recap the key points. Compute means running code. AWS offers multiple compute services because different situations need different levels of control. Amazon EC2 gives you full control over servers. However, AWS Lambda removes server management. Containers sit somewhere in between. If you can explain that in simple terms, you're in a good position for the exam. In the next episode, we'll talk about storage, where data lives in AWS, and we'll keep it just as simple and practical. If this has helped, subscribe and let's keep learning cloud the easy way. See you next time.